So, if anyone hasn't seen Loki, should I say, this will have spoilers, right? I love that show. Really good. I especially love the last episode. Didn't wrap up how I wanted it to. You might want to, I don't know, if you haven't seen Loki and you're watching this live, maybe go take a bit of a break, because we're going to be responding to I'll switch over to my camera once I've done this, once we've done with spoilers, because this video, it feels like it was made in 2016. It says 2021 here, but I'm maybe they've got a time machine. They traveled back to 2016. Oh, if you haven't seen Loki as well, I do recommend watching it, because it is a brilliant show. A few issues here and there. It is one of them things which we're going to get into certain things. Like, sometimes it will be a bit confusing, but later on it explains it somewhat. There are still things that are confusing to me, but maybe that will be cleared up with future MCU stuff. Anyway, this video, I expected it to be a decent criticism of the Loki series, right? But it just felt... This video is slow, muddled, and badly written, alright? That's what this video is. Alright. Good to show that they've got their... that they're self-aware. Not really, but... Anyway, let's watch this video. There's going to be spoilers. But, Alright. So...
What are you going to do?
I might turn that down a bit. Let me know if it's too loud or too quiet.
Make another show. Now, it's no secret that Marvel on TV hasn't exactly distinguished itself so far. WandaVision started out with an intriguing premise, only to devolve into a generic CGI shitfest with unlikable characters and extremely questionable moral message.
Okay, so here's right here. WandaVision. I liked the first 8 episodes. The last episode just fell flat for me. It was one of them things where I know that the 9th episode was one of them things which was building to, you expect it to be a great finale, and then it was just... It's like... And it's like, how did they fail this hardly? Right? I liked Agatha. Agatha was great, especially her theme song. That was great. And the 8th episode was good as well. I did like the 8th episode. It was just the 9th episode that... So essentially, to give you a bit of context, well, everyone, you should have seen it. You should have seen it, so I don't have to explain myself to you. Right? So off to a good start, right? And yeah, the morals were definitely questionable in WandaVision. So yeah. So, Matt, let's see how he fails with the rest of it.
Jeez.
They'll never know what you sacrificed for them.
While Falcon and the Winter Soldier started out as a CGI shitfest with marginally likeable characters, only to devolve into a boring, preachy, critical race theory lecture session.
You've got it.
Oh, I forgot how... Oh, yeah, so... Yeah, this is why it sounds like 2016. Even though, like, critical race theory is the newest boogeyman of conservatives online these days. But, yeah, so... With Falcon and the Winter Soldier, I knew that there'd be people mad about the fact that they talked about, black issues. But it's not like... It's not like he's wrong in a way, There are definitely people that will look at, that look at Falcon becoming Captain America and go, Captain America's meant to be white! And I enjoyed it. I found it weird at times, like when they made the bad guy blow up a building just because they're bad. That felt kind of... It's kind of like you're trying to make someone the bad guy. I guess, like, the whole thing with the flag smashers was that they're saying, oh, okay, you're supposed to do things peacefully, you know... Antifa shouldn't be, rioting. BLM shouldn't be rioting. Do things peacefully. And yeah, I agree with that. You know, there are times though when the frustration of people becomes understandable to the point where you can understand why they're doing actions that can be definitely questionable. You should try and do things peacefully. Unfortunately, giving a speech like this isn't really going to change much. Right? Saying, you got to do better. It's like, okay, well, how do you do better? But yeah, that's just my take on Falcon and the Winter Soldier. That was a good action thing.
Do better, Senator.
Fuck off, Falcon. In fact, fuck everyone associated with this crap. Except craft services, those guys are awesome. Anyway, with those out of the way, we come at last to Loki, Marvel's third attempt to ruin a popular established character by making them do and say things that their cinematic counterparts never would, while telling a pointless and unsatisfying story that didn't need to be told in the first place. Ready? Too fucking bad, because like I tell Tatiana every Saturday night, I'm going in hard and fast on this one, and it's up to you to make the best of it. So pucker up and witness this. Loki picks up...
Some jokes are just weird, and I don't know why they need to exist. Like, I get when things are a joke, but I don't know, like, it's just weird jokes. But it's like, I don't find it funny. Maybe some people will. Yeah, I get what Q is saying. This guy is revolting. Like, as I said, I get that it's a joke, but the joke doesn't need to exist. And I get that everyone knows what I'm talking about. I think everyone knows what I'm talking about. Shouldn't have to spell it out, you know?
During the events of Avengers Endgame, where a bit of time travel shenanigans allows Avengers-era Loki to escape custody with the Tesseract. But he's barely launched into his first ridiculously self-aggrandizing speech before a bunch of black stormtroopers show up and body-positive space cop stuns and captures him. I guess we'll just overlook the fact that Loki is half Asgardian, so he's got superhuman strength, endurance and reflexes, and...
Okay, so, you know... Sure, he's got good reflexes. You show that with, it shows that with how he got defeated. But do you remember how he got defeated? Right? So, when it comes to how Loki got defeated, it was he caught an arrow from Hawkeye, and then the arrow exploded. And then Hulk, who comes in and, bashes him around. Do you remember how he got defeated, right? That's how Loki got defeated. And, these TVA agents, they come in, they smack him with a thing, and he's... he starts falling in slow motion. But the TVA agent would have had years of training. Delay wants me to ask me to explain the entire MCU. It's hard to explain. But both those were superheroes, duh. Yeah. Still, technically you could call the TVA agents superheroes if you want. Like, they'll have had training, of course, Like, you don't just hire someone to go into the field that's going to be killed, the moment they go out. You want someone that's going to at least be able to try and hold hold their own ground. You know, but and the body positive, you know, some people can be, you know, more overweight than others, right? You know, if I see someone that's kind of big in a superhero film, I don't think, you know, that's unrealistic. They should be skinny from all that training. No, I just think it's a person, right? You know, it's just one of them things where it's weird criticism. Sounds like it's from 2016. You understand why I say this is from 2016, right?
And would almost certainly be able to fend off an attack like this. Gotta get whatever passes for a plot moving, I suppose. So body-positive space cop takes Loki to diverse commander lady, where he's found guilty of crimes against the...
Why are they pointing out this? Okay, why are they pointing out that it's diverse? Right? I didn't even think about that during the show. I just thought, that's a person. That's a person that exists. 82 asked, where did the TVA come from? Yeah, the writing was kind of shit that does justify the questions in some criticisms. Yeah, like, it's the criticism that you got to think about, like, what things are worth criticizing and what things aren't worth criticizing. Like, saying that it's diverse, it's like, yeah, everything's diverse. Life is diverse. Yeah, Q is right. This guy does sound like a racist. I won't say that he's clearly racist, because he might not be. It could be one of them things where he's just edgy anti-SJW, but it does sound kind of racist. 82 says he's pointing out those details because many producers have admitted to redressing and changing characters solely for the diversity and inclusion quotient. But it doesn't feel forced here, right? It's just like, oh yeah, you know, some people are black, some people are white, that's the way that it is. I didn't really feel that when watching the show. It's not something that came across my mind. It's flowed naturally. You know, I didn't. Sometimes there are things which it's like, oh, okay, that does seem a bit weird, but it's like, oh, okay, there are black people that exist. What's the problem with that? You know. Anyway, we'll continue with this.
The Time Variance Authority, and sentenced to be erased from existence. What the fuck is the TVA, you may ask? Well, the short version is that there used to be a bunch of different timelines, kind of like parallel universes or whatever, but then it all got a bit out of hand and they started fighting each other. Why the fuck would you go to war against a different branch of existence that has absolutely no impact on your own? Don't know. The upshot is that 3 giant space
Okay, so this is where I start to this is where the criticism is, like, that wasn't that explained at the end, right? That they could interact, and so they went to war. Did he watch the last episode, or he watched the last episode, right? That it explains it. Now there are some criticisms here that, you know, when you get that I have, you know. Like, when they disintegrated things and sent it to the void, right? Why? Or when they got pruned, why did they send all the matter as is to the void? Why didn't they just disintegrate the person? Like, literally just disintegrate the person, right? Kill them, and then send it to the void as a bunch of ashes, right? Like, why would they... Well, why not do the way that, you know, it stops it from ever being a problem, right? Why send it to the void as is, where it can possibly one day ruin everything? It just that's my criticism. I just And also, the whole thing with how these time things work with they disintegrate certain things that were affected to restore the timeline. Wouldn't that thing still have happened? Wouldn't they have to completely erase the timeline? How does erasing part of the timeline completely heal? I don't get it. It's one of those things which best explained by it just does. So, there are legitimate criticisms that you can have of this show. I have my own legitimate criticisms, especially when it comes to the last episode, but we'll get to that when we get there. All right.
Wizards somehow found a way to amalgamate all these different multiverses into one single timeline, and they created the TVA to maintain the integrity of it. And if anyone else is getting Umbrella Academy vibes from all of this, then rest assured you're not alone. Anyway, the TVA's main role is to hunt down variants, individuals who deviate from the correct flow of events and threaten the integrity of the timeline. How the fuck would you even begin to monitor something as infinitely vast and complex as the universe, where literally trillions of possible outcomes are decided every single nanosecond? How do the space lizards decide what the correct flow of events should be? Doesn't this mean that absolutely nothing that's happened up to this point actually means anything because free will doesn't even exist? Don't know. The point is that Loki's escape with the Tesseract altered...
Okay, so yeah, he's got a point there. Like, how would you even begin to monitor that? Like, the outside of time doesn't really work. It's a show, but it's one of the things where you got to suspend disbelief is an important thing when it comes to any fictional thing. Like, you can... it's one of those things. Like, I suppose it can be explained, but it is one of those things where... decent criticism. The thing that I took issue with was that last thing that he said. It's like, that's... The last thing that he said was, that's kind of the point of the show, that nothing you do, you don't have free will. That's kind of the point, right? The conflict in the show was, the TVA is taking away people's free will. Time to stop the TVA. At the start, it was sort of one of them things where it was, as an audience member, you kind of think... In fact, I was like... I liked Mobius, but I was like... He's gonna have to turn against Mobius, isn't he? This is why you wait until the end of a show to criticize things. Right. That's a good idea. Alright, anyway. I think if I remember correctly, his criticisms do get better after this, but there are some very weird criticisms still to come up, so I think he has some legitimate criticisms after this, if I remember correctly. I don't remember the entirety of the video, so...
the timeline and marked him out as a variance. Wait, shouldn't Tony Stark be erased since he's the one who invented the time machine? Now, Loki's all...
Apparently, according to the show, he was meant to do that. Right? Like, these things were mentioned in the show. You can say that Loki had a point, yeah, but it was mentioned in the show.
Set to be erased from history when Owen Wilson comes in with an offer he can't refuse. Help them to hunt down a particularly tricky variant they've been struggling to apprehend, and maybe they'll spare his life. I wonder why they want him in particular for a job like this. What is this about?
This isn't about you.
No way!
Oh wow, who could have predicted that this masked figure would turn out to be another variant of Loki?
I mean, they kind of said that. Right? It was one of them things where it was like, okay, I can't remember if he made this criticism. It seems like the criticism that he would make. Like, it seems like, right, after that reveal, that the only reason why they hid Sylvie's face was because to be like, oh my god, there's a woman Loki. It's like, because otherwise, it It'd be like if it was just Tom Hiddleston, and it was like, yeah, it's Tom Hiddleston. But otherwise, it's like, you know, one of them things where it's, oh my god, it's woman Loki. It's like, why did they need to be masked? You know, it makes no sense. It's one of them things which was unnecessarily dramatic. And maybe he does criticize that, right?
Naturally, because this Loki's a female, she's better than our version in every possible way. She's smarter, more cunning, more physically capable, better at fighting, and of course, she has a tragic backstory to totally...
I mean, they're both pretty equal. Did you not watch the last episode? In the last episode, they have a fight, and they're pretty on par with each other. The only difference is that this Loki the only difference is that this Loki has had years to come up with a plan, right? And it doesn't necessarily mean that she's smarter, right? There's things that... it explains it, right? It kind of... Southern Cross says, this is a bit boring. Is this a new... No, it's a show. So yeah. It's just a weird, very weird criticism. I've never heard criticism this bad.
justify her actions in the present, because as you know, no woman is capable of being evil according to modern Hollywood.
I mean, has it never been female bad? Do you remember Hela? Like, does anyone remember? Does anyone remember Hela? Like Thor Ragnarok? I haven't watched many. I haven't watched many. What's it called? Late movies lately, but that's instantly comes to mind. You got Hela. You got. I'm not gonna use Black Widow because like the bad guy in that was a guy pretty much, just controlling a whole lot of women. So, but. Yeah. And the thing is that it makes sense, right? If most superheroes are guys, that most bad people will be guys as well. Like, it makes sense.
Anyway, female Loki is out to destroy the TVA, and naturally original Loki starts following her around like an obedient puppy until the two of them get stranded on a planet that's about to explode. And they also have the hots for each other, which is really weird when you consider that they're literally variations of the same person.
Yeah, so I think everyone thinks that's weird. I don't think that there's a person that thinks, yeah, this is fine, right? And I'm actually glad in the last episode that they kind of ruined that relationship. If you know what I mean. Like, so they basically betray each other. Surely that's going to, like, ruin any feelings that they have for each other, right? Surely. Sure. Right? You'd think, at least. What was the other? Oh yeah, so Loki following around like an obedient puppy. So they kind of have the same sort of plan, right? Similar plans. Like Loki wants to take over the TVA, Sylvie wants to destroy the TVA. You know, they can be helpful. And the way that I saw it, the way that I interpret it, was like Sylvie's going to destroy the TVA, and Loki's like, sure. Well, it's like Loki is thinking, at least this is what I assumed he was thinking, is I'm the superior Loki, so I'm going to help her topple the TVA and then betray her, and it seems like it would be the way that he'd do it, right? Betray her and then take the TVA for himself.
So, like, if they have sex, is that considered incest or masturbation? But look,
I'd consider it incest, right? I'd definitely consider that incest.
luckily the TVA show up just in the nick of time and rescue them, and original Loki gets trapped in a punishment time loop where he gets kicked in the balls over and over again.
Okay. So I know that the show kind of explained this, right? So the show kind of explained the ending, the how they get saved by it being ordained by Kang, which is really weird. Like, like Kang does seem like he got like a little bit too much. What's the way to put it? He got a bit too. He seemed too godlike for being just a scientist dude. Way too godlike for that. And then, so he's kind of ordained that. But it does seem kind of forced, like... It seemed like they either ran out of time and had to quickly save them, or I don't know. It's just really, really, really weird how that came to be. Q says, "Oh, come on, not non-incest, different version of yourself, but female. Who's to say you even share the same genes?" I'd assume you say you share the same genes. I'd assume that. You'd share at least some of the same genes. I'd assume that you'd actually be. It'd be like if it'd be like you'd share some of the same genes. It's like if you had a sister, right? It's almost like a sister. Anyway, we'll continue on with this.
Fuck off, show! Eventually, the two Loki...
Yeah, that was a kind of painful bit to watch, just because it's like, ouch. Like, you know, you can watch people getting shot over and over again in like an action thing, but when someone gets kicked in the balls multiple times, you feel that.
reunite, get to the space lizards and kill them, but they turn out to be puppets, and the man pulling the strings is actually a crazy black guy living in a floating castle at the end of time and space.
Okay, why is he pointing out that it's a black guy? I don't know. It's just weird how he points out every diversity thing. And he does seem a bit crazy, but, you know, like, you'd have to be if you know most of the things that's happening, right? That's what gives him a bit of personality, right? I've seen people that say that King doesn't seem like he has much personality and that he's going to be boring as a big bad, but I liked the King that we saw at the Citadel. He's had personality. The kind of I really love villains like Arden from Final Fantasy 15, where they have this personality that is kind of, it's a bit of a playful personality, you know. That's why I liked Negan from The Walking Dead. He had that personality where it's you know he's a dick, but he's you know, how do I explain this? You know Negan's a dick, right? But you know when he's on screen, kind of thing. He doesn't hide himself. He plays around a bit, which in a way can be a bit of your downfall. Which, the charisma would be the thing that I'm talking about. They have this sort of charisma. They're crazy, but that gives them the charisma.
And he explains that he used to be a scientist who discovered all the multiverses and made contact with other versions of himself, but eventually they fell out and a war almost wiped out the universe until he recruited a giant space monster thing to eat all the other timelines so that his reality was the only one left. If the other multiverses were allowed to regrow, it would spawn new versions of himself that would eventually start the whole war again. The result is a kind of paradox.
So he did watch it. You know, that's... See, it explains it.
Where the Lokis have only two choices: either kill him and start a multiversal war that will result in his eventual resurrection, or take over themselves and carry on his work. Either way, well, he wins. Quite the conundrum if I do say so myself. But then female Loki just says fuck it and kills him anyway, and original Loki ends up in a different reality so that the show can set up the multiverse of madness.
What's the problem with that? Right? Like, I do think that the TVA could have been handled better. Like, okay, here's the thing. So, the TVA is... The way that that was handled in the MCU is definitely sloppy, but weird. Just the whole thing of trying to prune realities doesn't really make sense. Like, I do remember hearing that in the comics, the way that the TVA was it just watched over all the realities, and didn't really get involved all that much. It got involved sometimes, but not too often. And that's how the TVA worked. It wasn't trying to prune realities. Now, they've repurposed it for the MCU. And so the idea in the MCU is that TVA is trying to prune realities, and, you know, they try and make it, they have this sacred timeline. The thing is, they didn't really need to do that. Like, they've retconned Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. out of the MCU. I think they've retconned Agent Carter out. Basically said, okay, this is no longer canon. Also, same with Inhumans and all that kind of stuff. So it's kind of like, okay, so you didn't really think ahead, right? Having to retcon things out because you want to add a new plot point in it's bad writing. But that being said, if we don't consider things like Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., then this is a fun show. Anyway, we've got 5 minutes of this thing. Oh yeah, I do remember some of the criticisms that I do have to point out.
Honestly, just when I think the MCU can't get any dumber or more disrespectful to its own legacy, along comes something like Loki to totally subvert my expectations. This show is an insult, not just to Marvel or its characters, but to basic storytelling, common sense, and human intelligence. It's a perfect example of what happens when hubris, agenda, and greed take priority over storytelling. A show made by people who either don't understand or openly hate the very property they've inherited.
Alright, so agenda, I think the agenda here is to make money, right? I find it really weird when a lot of people, especially conspiracy-minded people, will talk about agenda, right? Now, generally, agenda means diversity, right? So, that's what they sort of mean when they say agenda. They're like talking about diversity, and diversity didn't ruin it. The only sort of diversity thing that you could say could be an issue in Loki was the fact that they hid female Loki until the reveal. And it's like, that reveal was kind of forced. But if that is a legitimate criticism. But the other diversity in it isn't I don't have a problem with it, right?
Or simply don't care about anything except using them as a platform for the message.
See what I mean? Right? Yeah. Like, I don't see how this... Oh yeah, there is one small thing, which does have some legitimate criticism, so we'll get to that.
Loki himself now talks and acts like a completely different person, following
Okay, there's a thing that could be, character growth is a thing.
for obvious deceptions that he never would have before, making dumb decisions that are
Falling for obvious deceptions, like what? What deceptions does... Oh, like, how people with emotions have deceptions, right? It's... like, people change. That's a thing that happens.
totally inappropriate to the situation, or failing to come up with any logical plans, contingencies, or counters to anything that's happening. This version of Loki is emotional, short-sighted, impulsive, stupid, weak, needy, and gullible. In short, a once smart, calculating, and formidable character has been artificially dumbed down in order to make this fucking shit show possible.
I mean, he didn't seem like he found out the thing to do with what's it called, the apocalypse thing, right? He's not stupid. He showed that he's smarter than Mobius, and there are things that it's kind of like, the whole thing with the, where he tried to... There are things where it's kind of like, yes, he was being an obvious... it was obvious that he was lying. And he, it was one of the things where at the start you sort of thought, maybe, is he being truthful here? And it's like, no, he was obviously lying. Just the way that the show framed it with the, wait, don't go outside. And then, he was obviously trying to get to the timekeepers. And the show makes that obvious, right? And yeah, it was one of the things where I don't think that he was as dumb as this person is trying to make him out to be. Like, yeah, sure, he had dumb moments, but same with the original Avengers, right? He had dumb moments in that. It's just like he is also emotional, and like even in the Avengers, that's kind of the point. Like even people have emotions just because. Like, I don't even really... seeing your own death, right, would make you emotional as well. Just because... Like, it's like he's saying that Loki can't change. But, anyway.
I've said before that any character, no matter how awesome, is only ever as smart as the person writing them, and well, make of that what you will. But hey,
that's true.
He's bisexual now, as we find out in a blink and you'll miss it scene that I'm willing to bet 99% of the audience didn't even notice or care about.
Or perhaps another prince.
A bit of both. I suspect the same as you.
Oh my god, I was literally shaking. Not that
Okay, so when it comes to that, I actually found more LGBTQ people criticizing that than praising it. Right? It's one of the things where a lot of people will point to these point to corporations pandering to LGBT things, saying, okay, they're just pandering. woke gone mad that they want. It's like, no, like the LGBT people criticize the pandering because it's badly handled, right? Just because something has illusion, like so with Loki, right? As he said, it was a throwaway line, and as I said, well, I don't think I said this, but that is a valid criticism, right? Saying that it was a throwaway line. Yeah, that's the criticism, is that it is a throwaway line, but the reason that he's criticizing it is not the same reason that everyone else is criticizing it. Everyone is criticizing it because it's a throwaway line, it's not explored in any way. It's just one of them things where it's, oh, so he's bi. Okay, cool. Are we going to do anything? No, we're not going to do anything. We've got to keep this available in China, right? Because the Chinese government doesn't allow depictions of LGBTQ issues, right? Or not issues, but depictions of LGBTQ depictions, right? Doesn't allow that, so they keep it in a throwaway line that can just be like, doesn't really necessarily. It's a blink and you miss it kind of thing, so that it gets approved in China, so that they can get the China dollars. Yeah, but they're not going to act on it, and so that disappoints a lot of people that are in that community. They're not soy-facing over it. They are criticizing it too, just for different reasons.
Any of this particularly matters anyway, because really, Loki is just a side character in his own show. The real star of this story is female Loki, better known as Sylvie, a version of him that escaped TVA custody as a child by stamping on an agent's foot.
I would actually... Hold on. Does he? I don't think he...
And she's been on the run most of her...
Yeah, he doesn't even criticize it. He could have, right, said, how was the TVA able to capture that Loki? The Loki that... He could have said, how was the TVA able to capture the Loki that has been trained in or that has been, in his prime, so to speak, but wasn't able to keep female Loki. It's like, it's kind of weird, right? But it's a valid criticism. It's surprising why he didn't bring that up. You'd think he would. Like, he did criticize that they were able to capture Loki. It's like, one of them, choose one. You can't have them both. It does seem like a kind of forced... thing. So... Yeah, it would have made more sense if she had gotten some kind of help. Maybe if one of the TVA agents helped her out, that would have made more sense. Hell, Novelima says, Disney is always virtue signaling. They pretend to care about social issues, but then they shrink POC characters in China posters and film movies close to literal concentration camps. Yeah. That's one of the things with corporations. They pretend to care about issues, right? They'll do it for the LGBT dollars, right? But then they'll, as soon as it comes to actually do anything, it's like, no. Like, there's the whole Gravity Falls thing. Remember that guy from Gravity Falls that wasn't allowed to include, I think it was a scene where it showed that a character was explicitly like LGBT or something, but Disney said, no, you're not allowed to do that. I think it was Gravity Falls. But every Pride Month, they push out LGBT merchandise to Panda. Anyway, what's more of this? as I said, this video feels like it was made in 2016, but published in 2021.
Life, plotting for a way to take revenge. The entire narrative is basically structured around this character and her objective, and original Loki is just along for the ride. Sylvie is the one making...
I mean, it is one of the things where I did empathize a bit more with male Loki than female Loki, because you do understand her plight. But, like, it is mostly centered around male Loki, isn't it? Like, they both need each other kind of thing. It wouldn't work without one or the other. The name of the show is called Loki, so it makes sense that it has more than one Loki.
all the major decisions, winning all the important battles, figuring out the most vital clues, and generally driving the plot forward. While
Did she? I mean, okay, so she figured out Elias could be enchanted, right? Which, you know, you kind of need the power of enchantment for that. But the person that won that battle was Old Man Loki, actually. So, let's try and think. In the whole TVA thing, it was... She didn't really... Like, I don't really see it as her winning a battle. What? Where'd she win a major battle? The last thing? When she killed the guy? That was due to a betrayal. No, I didn't really... I'm just trying to think. Like, when... Okay, so there was... When Loki got pruned, there was that. But that was when they thought the battle was over. Yeah, I can't really think of any times. There was a few... Okay, so there was a battle on the train. And Loki got thrown out. She had to kind of go out as well. Yeah, that's one. Yeah, that could be one, like... But that was one of the things where she just needed to jump off the train, I'd say. And they didn't really win that battle either. Like, the fact that they weren't able to repair the tempad meant that they lost the battle. Oh, I just can't think of... Apart from that battle on the train, I can't really think of any battles that she won for Loki. No, like, let me know. Like, was there any battles that she won that would have that she particularly won? I'd have to go back and watch the 4th episode because I can't remember the one against the Timekeepers. Oh, she did help out there, though. Because with the... but that was more to do with the... Yeah, like, there's the battle against the end of the series, but that was, like, one of them betrayal things. Right? She needed to betray Loki in order to win that battle. Like, doesn't seem like she could have otherwise. Yeah, it does... Like, was there... I would have to go back and watch the TVA one, because I do remember she comes in, or the one in the TVA where, against Timekeepers, because that one, she could have won for Loki. I can't remember exactly if she did. I think she helped out, but that was due to, I think it was B, the agent, the TVA agent, that she was able to come and help, I think. If I remember correctly.
Original Loki just kind of stumbles along behind her looking confused. Jesus, what a fucking waste of an amazing actor. The hallmark of shitty writers is their inability to elevate their own mediocre work, either through lack of talent, intelligence, or creativity. So instead, they resort to tearing down everyone else to make themselves look better. Like the...
Okay, so there is one part that I do think was badly written. And that's when they get saved. Like, that part was like, if you need to resort to a Deus Ex Machina sort of situation, then it's a bad, then it's bad writing. But that's the only time that I think I've seen that kind of thing in the show. Oh, the other one is the Sylvie stepping on the foot of stepping on the foot of the TVA agent. That's the other one.
Infinity Stones, for example, which were set up as some of the most powerful and destructive objects in the known universe, only for the TVA to use them as paperweights. Because that makes the TVA look really cool, right? Or
it's more just establishing that Infinity Stones don't work in the TVA. It does make sense. They explain that magic doesn't work in the TVA. Same with which goes for the Infinity Stones. Goes for Loki's powers.
Loki himself, who was once a cool and ruthless antagonist, but now he's a background character in his own story, constantly getting outsmarted, overpowered and humiliated by a selection of strong, diverse female characters. Honestly, this shit is so fucking ridiculous and predictable at this point that it barely even qualifies as storytelling. It's just recycling the same formula and ticking the same boxes over and over again. Constantly.
So it does have some of the same formula, like one of the antagonists being another version of himself. Like, you could say that Marvel is taking the villain being the character to the extreme there. But that's more of, but she's not the entire antagonist throughout the show, right? And I didn't find it predictable, I mean, to be fair, the Kang being the person at the end was predictable, but it was more of people noticed things, right? It was like, oh yeah, like this person. It was more of them laying clues, and it's like, oh yeah, this is who it's gonna be. If you didn't know about the comics, you wouldn't know that it was going to be Kang, right? Which can be considered lazy writing, right? If you rely on the comics to make the reveal of a bad guy known, then yeah, that's kind of lazy writing. If you rely on the comics to make the ultimate reveal interesting, that's lazy writing. But yeah, like, he didn't mention that, did he? I didn't even mention that. Anyway.
Belittling and mocking the work of previous writers doesn't just bring down their accomplishments, it diminishes your own, such as they are. It implies that you don't have enough confidence in your own work to put it on an equal playing field, and the only way to win is to retroactively handicap the other players. The problem is that your audience isn't as dumb as you. They can see exactly what you're doing, and they know why you're doing it. The writing, direction...
It's almost like some of his criticisms were seen by the people that knew what they were doing and why they were doing it. Like, you know, the whole thing to do with the LGBT stuff, right? Maybe the LGBT community knew what Disney was doing here and knew why they were doing it, and also criticized them.
And pacing is some of the worst I've seen in any MCU product ever. The first 3 episodes are basically an endless stream of dull conversations over a table, or dull conversations over lunch, or dull conversations over a drink. Everyone is always talking, but none of them are saying anything worth listening to. It's all trite, irrelevant, repetitive garbage. Like the
Like, I think that a lot of people, when it comes to things like movies and shows, they like action, right? And I understand liking things go boom, right? You know, but I think that it's good when things have. I think that it's good for shows and movies to have a bit more dialogue. I liked some of the dialogue in Loki, right? That thing over lunch where he explains it. That was a funny scene. I think that if the dialogue is at least, if it's not advancing the story, it should be funny, because that builds character, right? Building character is very important. You want to build up your characters. You don't want your characters to all be, this is a character. No, you want to get to know characters. Sometimes, okay, so I remember playing Final Fantasy VII Crisis Core, and there was a part of the game where it slows down a lot. There's no action. You're not fighting anyone. All of it's text. And yeah, if it was one of them things where it had been voiced, I would have enjoyed it more. But it is important for building character. You know, you go around and you find out the character that's sort of joining you, right? There's no fighting until the end of that plot line. There's this kid that is only in the slow parts of the game, so he appears again, but only for another part of the slow parts, which is again for building character, and it makes you care more about the characters rather than, you know, just trying to advance the plot. I feel like a lot of people have this idea where character building takes a back seat to them, where everything must be to advance the plot. And I don't think that's a good mindset to have. I think that you need to have, obviously you do need to advance the plot. Like, if the plot gets too slow, then that's bad. And in Crisis Core, like during the moments that I'm talking about, the main plot took a backseat during these points, right? It's just one of them things where you didn't have to worry about the plot. But with this, yeah, the plot gets portrayed a bit. Now, the first episode, I will admit, it is kind of slow, but it is important for building, because it's not. Firstly, it's showing Loki and making a few changes to, letting him know how he's changed, or how he's changing for this show. Showing him his future, right, and how he reacts to that. That's pretty important, I think. And then there's getting to know the character of Mobius.
First episode, which is basically Loki talking about his feelings and insecurities for 45 minutes, eventually admitting that he's a weak, fragile attention seeker. Oh god, make it stop! Remember when scripts would show characters acting with a consistent pattern of behaviour and trust the audience to make up their own minds about them, instead of straight up telling you what their personality is? Characters constantly repeat things they've already said, reiterate stuff the audience already knows, and circle back to previous ideas and conversations without adding anything new, and it all just smacks of lazy, bloated, amateurish writing that desperately needs to be tightened up.
So, when it comes to the whole thing about Loki saying, "Oh, I'm weak," or whatnot, desperate. I think the line was a desperate attempt at power, or something like that. Anyway, that was more of him realizing about himself rather than him spelling it out for the audience. There's a difference here. You need, right? So, sometimes there's characters that don't know the things that the audience know. And having them just go, oh yeah, this is... Just having them go, oh yeah, I figured this out off screen. It's like, where'd that come from? People would be complaining more if Loki had just all of a sudden changed and then was a different person. That's what people would complain about if there wasn't that first episode. Sure, it might have been slow, but that doesn't make it unimportant.
Fans of talented writers and directors, this show could easily have been wrapped up in 3 or 4 tightly scripted episodes, instead of this tedious, repetitive shite churned out by talentless hacks that were happy to stand on the shoulders of giants and take a shit all over them in the process. And what's...
That is I will admit, that is a funny joke there. Like, yes, stand on top of the shoulders of giants and take a shit all over them. Yeah, that's a funny joke. I'll give him credit there. Hey, at least some of his jokes land.
Funny here is that the show actually tries to grapple with big, meaty philosophical ideas, like the toppling of dictators leading to a destructive power vacuum, or the paradoxical choice between secure servitude and chaotic free will. But because the writers are fucking idiots, the show's unable to offer any meaningful insights or solutions to any of this stuff. It's just kill the bad guy and hope for the best. The upshot is that Loki is quite simply a waste of time and money.
So, when it comes to the whole thing with power vacuums, like, yeah, it's... I think it more deals with free will, and it deals with the idea of whether something is... whether it is good to, take away people's free will for the greater good. That's something that it does try and grapple with. But I don't think that it's necessarily trying to... I don't think that it's necessarily trying to give you an answer. Like, does everything have to be spelled out for you? Do you think people are watching this going, I don't know if it's good to take away people's free will. Oh, I wish the show would have told me if it was. No, people are more likely to... have discussions about it. Go, okay, well, I don't think that it's good for reasons of this, and this. And then someone could go, well, I disagree. I think that the greater good is always what should be kept on top. Now, if you can do it without taking away people's free will, then, yeah, you should do it that way. But maybe it's good to just enact fascism. Obviously, I don't think that it's good to enact fascism. I don't think that was me speaking from my own thing. Like, it's one of them things where it doesn't give you the answer. Like, you could read into it and say, well, obviously it was... Obviously, you could say that, Loki is saying that fascism is good. Right? You could say that. But that's when you read into the fact that, you know, Kang was right. But in saying that, you know, doesn't Loki and Sylvie, don't they deserve? Could there be another way? And this is only in the context of a multiverse, right? This is only in the context of a multiverse. With the singular universe, you got to. If this was all set in a singular universe and they had, like, the TVA was not, was more of an authoritarian dictatorship, yeah, it would be different. It's very different scenarios which you can't really apply Loki to reality because, again, Loki has the threat of a multiverse. Reality so far doesn't.
Money, a waste of talented actors and interesting characters, and a waste of all the years of hard work that made this show possible in the first place. The Infinity Saga was all about hooking you in and getting you invested, but it's becoming pretty obvious that the honeymoon is over now, and so is the fun that came with it. Now the MCU is all about quotas, messages, and smashing down everything they built up. Kind of like the comic book industry now that I think about it. Well, if that's the case, they're
Okay, so I think that's it for this video. Yeah, so when it comes to that, like I think that the Phase 4 is going to be interesting. I'm looking forward to Kang. I didn't get any, like, diversity in Loki wasn't obnoxious like he's trying to make it out to be. It really didn't seem obnoxious at all. I think that there's still one of them. I think they still need the elements of hooking you in, which, you know, especially after a long break. You know, WandaVision was the first thing. They're basically using the TV shows as a platform to try and hook people in by the seams of it. Because Black Widow didn't really work to hook you in. It's more of... would have fit more into Phase 3, honestly. Which, hey, the whole Black Widow thing was actually... If you were worried about Disney's or Marvel's adversity to, or if you're worried about Marvel's trying to pander to audiences, remember when they didn't want to make a Black Widow movie because it wouldn't sell? Remember that? It's almost like they realized that Wonder Woman did well and was like, oh, yeah, we can make money off this, so let's make a Black Widow movie.